Hey guys, this is Gamer Cowboy to another Pokemon trading card game history video. It's been a little bit since I personally recorded one of these, mostly because we spent a long time in Ultra Prism, and since Paradox Rift came out, Pepper had to take a little bit of extra time coding that into the game as well. So yeah, the mod has been updated for that, but that's not what we're playing at the moment. We're on the third of the 4 core sets for 2018, which is Forbidden Light. So I don't really care for this set, I'll be honest. It's not that there's nothing in here, but this has just been one of those weeks where I've just been like, I don't really know what I want to play because none of it's really that insanely cool to me or anything, you know. This is certainly not like the last set where there were several decks that I wanted to play. Most of those, basically all of those have already been played out, and this set just kind of boring to me. But it is really important historically because it has some exceptionally good cards, not just now, but in the future as well. So there's a lot of good to go over. Just, yeah, don't blame me too much if I don't get too excited for it. Our promo cards this time, the noteworthy ones at the very least, are the 5 here. I actually slightly misremembered. I think I mentioned this in the Ultra Prism video. I misremembered exactly when the Duskmane and Dawnwings Necrozma single prizes came out. These actually were not available last set, but the Duskmane in particular is pretty good. For 1 Metal Energy, it does 60 to one of the opponent's GX or EX Pokemon. It's not affected by weakness and resistance, so if you do hit a God of War on the active, it's still only going to do 60, but that's a lot of damage for a single energy to do. And then Rusty Claws for 2 Metal and a Colorless does 100, but if you are on, if your opponent is on exactly 1 prize remaining, it does 200 instead. So this can be the come from behind clincher. Unfortunately, it takes 3 energy, so counter energy is not really available for this, but it's really good in the metal based decks, and it is an Ultra Beast, which is important for the tag in this set. There's a really good payoff in this set for that. Dawnwings, not nearly as good, but you can consider it because the psychic cost is actually payable now. The prize gimmick on this one is if you have exactly 6 prizes remaining, your first attack does 20 plus 20 for each damage counter that's on this Pokemon. It's got 130 HP, it could survive a hit, but it is weak to Dark, so the main 120 damage hit you'd be taking, you take for weakness and you just die anyway, so oh well. Also just doesn't work after you have taken a single prize, so not particularly good. Sword of Dawn is okay though. For 3 Psychic Energy, very expensive, but it does 130, and then you discard 2 energy off this Pokemon. Since Psychic Recycling is actually something this set does very well, you can consider this if you're in a pure Psychic build of Malamar. We'll just say it now, that is the main card. Zygarde-GX actually has a different version in this set as well. The promo one is mostly considerable for Liberation GX because the rest of it is pretty bad, and even this attack is not especially good, but it could come up sometimes. Your opponent reveals their hand and you do 120 damage for each energy card you find there. Only problem is most players don't tend to keep more than 1 energy card in their hand, if any, so it's not likely to do very much, and it takes 2 fighting, 2 colorless for that. That's what the other one takes for its main attacks as well, and the other one's just better, to be honest, but we'll get to that in the main set. The main reason you could consider this one is because of a supporter card in the set that lets you use multiple Zygarde-GX attacks, so you might end up using this one if you really wanted to. Cool shiny card though. Thundurus and Tornadus are both extremely bad, to be honest. They have very expensive attacks, especially the Thundurus, in the type that doesn't really get good acceleration at the moment. We've still got to wait a bit for this, and it's only 140 damage it does anyway. Technically enough to KO Lele with a Choice Band, so there's at least that. But your GX attack requires coin flips, that's never going to work, and Tornadus just doesn't even do very much damage anyway. Flip until Tails for its main thing, starting at 90 and only gaining 30, like really? 50% of the time 90 damage for free energy is just terrible, especially on a GX like this. It's not even a bulky one. Discard all energy on the opponent's active is a nice effect for the GX attack, but that's not good enough either, to be honest with you. It's just like, yeah, really terrible, so we will move on. On to the set proper, I think it's only really right that we talk about the trainers and stuff first, like we usually do anyway, but especially here, Beast Ring is unbelievable. You can only play this if the opponent has exactly 3 or 4 prizes remaining. That is critical to note, but it is also something which is incredibly difficult for basically all decks to play around, because unless you are taking like a snipe hit and a 2 prize hit in the same turn, you are going to put them at 4 prizes or 3 prizes. So it's just like, yeah, instant thing. What do you get for this crazy requirement? Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy, attach them to one of your Ultra Beasts. You can't attach to multiple, that's the one good thing you have going for it. Has to both be to the same thing. But this is double energy acceleration from the deck that you can play multiples of in the same turn. And if the opponent can't immediately get down to 2 prizes, you can play this in the next turn. And it just is absolutely absurd. Yeah. There are decks that, there are other Ultra Beast decks and stuff that don't even play acceleration for their discard attacks, because this thing is just ridiculous. Unbelievable card. Very annoying to play around as well, so expect to see a ton of this. Bonnie is the supporter card for Zygarde. Apparently it was a thing in the anime, so sure. You can only play this if there's a stadium in play, because you have to discard that stadium, but during this turn, even if you have flipped your GX marker, you can use your GX attacks on Zygarde. Now, this doesn't really do anything if you have not used your GX attack already, so luckily, Zygarde is a deck that actually plays its GX attack early and often if you can play Bonnie with it, so it's a good card, just gotta play aggressively with the Zygarde, we'll say. Crash Awake is a really cool card that currently is a bit awkward to play, it just doesn't have that much of a home, because there's not a lot that's playing enough water energy to make this work. Discard 2 waters from your hand, and if you do, search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them into the hand. Double computer search. Nowadays this is called Adamant, because it's a metal type version is what we have now, but Crash Awake is really cool. I think there is, I think it's like Blastoise ends up being a deck that uses this later, because there are enough energies and stuff, then you can get like rare candy, etc. from it. So that's really cool. But just double computer search is insane, right? You just need enough energy to actually do it. And currently, I don't really have a deck that could do this. So maybe Lapras or something, because you could discard 2, get double Aqua Patch, and maybe go from there. But I don't know if Lapras is strong enough anymore, so maybe it's not good enough. Diantha is a really good card for Gardevoir. Because you can only play it if one of your fairy Pokemon was KO'd during the opponent's last turn. Doesn't have to be by damage, so sniping in the middle of the turn with like damage counter placing also works for this. Say goodbye to Deciduizers. What do you get for it? Put 2 cards in the discard pile into the hand. Not even just Item Finder, this is just put 2 cards. It's like 2/3 for Hollow Hunt in the middle of your turn. Ultra strong card, because you can just get back the Gardevoir that was KO plus the rare candy used to get into it, and that is your setup for the turn. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of this when Gardy ends up getting played again. Only reason I'm not playing it this set is because it has a partner next set that I want to showcase it with instead. Enderporter I have seen in decklist, and I have no idea why. This card just seems really bad to me. Move a special energy from one of the opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon. Plus side, you do get to shift an energy to something that doesn't necessarily want or need it, and it avoids special charge being a thing with it, I suppose, because you don't discard it unless it's like strong energy or splash energy and you put it on a non-fighting / water Pokemon. Downside, they keep the energy, which special energy is hard to recover, so like I don't really see the point in this. We have Enhanced Hammer that just discards the energy, and you don't need 8 discard cards for special energy, so I don't know, it's weird. Fossil Excavation map is pretty cool. It lets you get the unidentified fossil from the deck or the discard pile. We have had this sort of effect before. I think it actually was Fossil Excavation map as well. It'll let you search for like fossils in Gen 4 or something, I think. Pretty cool. The fossil cards are pretty hard to play at the moment, but there are decks for them later. There's a couple that are actually worth it, so this could be considered in the future. Judge gets a reprint here just so we have it still in format, because that's not too long from the rotation pool, so that's kind of neat. It's going to be the only hand disruption that we have for a little bit outside of Marshadow, so it's considerable just for that. Lady is a new supporter here, lets you search your deck for up to 4 basic energy, put them into the hand. This is a 1-card upgrade from Silent in Generation 5. Not really super useful, to be honest. It does have a pretty cute full art though, which is not actually in this set, so yeah. Lysander gets a Prism Star card here, so it is actually different from Lysander in Expanded. For each of your fire Pokemon in play, put a card from the opponent's discard pile into the Lost Zone. There's like one specific deck this would absolutely dumpster in the next set, but ultimately not very useful, to be honest. Even if you have a lot of fire Pokemon there, like, I think the best you can do with this really is against a deck that recycles from the discard pile is just Lost Zoning enough of their cards that they want to recycle, but that's still not amazing, and you need like a full field of fire Pokemon for that. Right now, fire is not a good enough type to justify that. You've got like Ho-Oh, Salazzle, or Volcanion potentially, but they don't want to play this. It's too slow for them, so yeah, not a good card. Lysander Labs, on the other hand, which we haven't yet seen but could end up being really good, does see some play from time to time in this upcoming season. Pokemon tools in play have no effect. So no more float stones, no more choice bands, no more fury belts, that sort of thing. Very cool disruption card, just kind of need the right deck for it. There's a Pyroar in this set we'll just briefly mention that synergizes in a way with this as well. Metal Frying Pan ends up being incredibly annoying later on. Right now is kind of superfluous, but later this becomes really strong. The metal Pokemon this is attached to takes 30 less damage from attacks and has no weakness. So basically every metal Pokemon is weak to fire, and this makes you not weak to fire. That's like the whole idea. Super neat. Mysterious Treasure is a very, very strong card for the decks that can play it, and one of the main reasons Malamar ends up being so good from this set. Discard 1 card from your hand. If you do, search your deck for a Psychic or Dragon Pokemon, reveal it, put it into the hand. So it's Ultra Ball for those two types, but you only discard 1 card, which means you can be far more efficient with your hand stuff, basically. If you have like 5 cards in hand and one of them's a supporter you want to keep, 2 of them are Mysterious Treasure, you can just use the 2 treasures and still get the supporter play. If you had Ultra Ball, you could not. Speaking on Ultra stuff, we have Ultra Beast support in this set as well. Ultra Recon Squad over here discards up to 2 Ultra Beasts from your hand, and you draw 3 cards for each one you discarded that way. Draw 6 is really cool. Like, this is still +3 as far, that's like better than most cards are for hand advantage. You can search out Ultra Beasts with the Stadium card Ultra Space over here. Just lets you literally search for any Ultra Beast and put it into your hand, so that's really cool. But Recon Squad I don't think ends up being useful enough. Mostly because where it would have been useful, this effect gets printed on a Naganadel that ends up being just better, and ultimately there are not enough Ultra Beasts that you would play in one deck to justify this right now. But if you have an excess just so that you make sure you have enough like spare Pokemon around, this could be really good. The unidentified fossil is back in here. We do have 2 special energy as well. Beast energy is absurd, to be honest. Luckily it's a 1 per deck thing because it's a Prism Star card, but this card is ridiculous. If it's attached to an Ultra Beast, it provides a Rainbow energy and 30 extra damage, which is ridiculous. It doesn't drop off if it gets attached to something else. It is still a Colorless energy even if you put it on another Pokemon, so sometimes you might see that happen, but yeah, this card is busted. There's no better way of putting it. This turns Buzzwole into like do a bazillion damage for 1 energy immediately, and there's other good stuff in here that it does as well. Finally, Unit Energy is a Fairy fighting Dark one this time round. This does actually come up a little bit from time to time. I think the Whimsicott deck ended up playing this way later on down the line because it wanted the Fairy Energy part, and you can tech some funky stuff in there because of the 2 other types as well. So yeah, On to the Pokemon, and we actually start with a useful one here. The the Execute is only 40 HP, we have a 50 HP at 1 in format, so we don't play this one. The attack is kind of nice, but yeah, 40 HP is just too vulnerable. But the Executor goes all the way up to 160 HP on a one prizer, but this one prizer actually attacks, which makes it very different from the other sort of store-based stuff like Regigigas. For 1 grass energy, you do 20 plus 20 more damage for each type of basic energy in your discard pile. You are capped at 5, so you do 120 total damage, but 120 for 1 on a 160 HP single prizer is super good. This usually takes 2 hits to KO, so yeah, really cool stuff. Next thing we'll want to mention is a lot of the Gen 4 Pokemon, like I said in Ultra Prism, they have their alternate types here. So we have the Abomasnow, and by extension the Snover here. Snover's Ice Shard is actually more relevant as a grass type than a water type. If you put a Choice Band on this, it's like 180 damage with weakness, just barely short of killing Lycanroc, but you know, that's pretty good for a basic that evolves. So Abomasnow can accelerate grass energy to one of your Pokemon from the discard pile once per turn, when you evolve into it. It's pretty cool. The Heatran is now a fire type instead of the metal type. Not really super good, but it's still there. The Palkia-GX is a water type now, so now you can use it with Aqua Patch, which makes it better, but I still don't like this one too much, to be honest. The next one is, where are we at? The Magnezone line. We don't have the Bench Shield Magnemite in Lightning, so that's maybe a little unfortunate. You could still play it though, because it attacks for colorless, so whatever. But we do get the one that searches lightning energy, which is fine, and then we have another Magnezone that accelerates lightning energy Rain Dance style. This one has less retreat, but it has more HP than the last one. So less retreat means no heavy ball right now, but that's still like passable, I suppose. The next one is the Rotom, which is the basic Rotom, so it does 120 for free energy, can't attack next turn, but if you have 9 or more tools in the discard pile, you just ignore the energy cost of this, so it's 120 to 0. Is pretty good. Psychic is of course a good attacking type, so that's very reasonable. The next one was fighting types. The Torterra is now a fighting type, but honestly it does not matter in the slightest. But all the Prevos are still grass type, and triple fighting is even harder to get than triple grass, so it's really bad. Loads of HP though. Infernape does not do anything as a fighting type, unfortunately. It does get some support from this set that it can do extra damage, so this one might do more damage than the fire type one, but fighting does not deal with burns in the slightest, so it's just not really useful. The Garchomp line gets the fighting type treatment here as well. This is the Ascension Gible, not the one that can get 0 retreat, but it's a toss-up. Like, this Gible can be searched with Brooklet Hill, which is good, but the other Gible can be searched with Mysterious Treasure, which the other Garchomp could also be searched by now, so it's kind of weird. This one can use Strong Energy and get some support from like Diancie in this set, just I guess spoilers for later, but yeah, not amazing. Toxicroak is also fighting type this time around. This one I think is actually kind of neat, because the exact revenge attack is just the polar opposite of what it was as a psychic type. If any of your psychic Pokemon were KO'd by damage last turn, 120 damage. The other one was the psychic one that if your fighting Pokemon got KO'd by damage, 70 more. This could work in a counter-based deck, right? Because they work off of each other. You can also maybe throw in Mew or something if you want the psychic type part as well. I think it's pretty good. So if you wanted a fun deck, that is one that you could do. Then onto the metal stuff, we have Empoleon, ends up being a metal type instead of a water. This one just does absolutely nothing because the water one is just straight up better because Aqua Patch, but I suppose if you really need to hit Gardevoir for weakness for some reason, maybe if you can't get the Choice Band down, I don't know, whatever. And then Dialga ends up just being better as a metal type because it's not weak to Gardevoir anymore. So the Gardevoir can't just one-shot you on the crap pack, and you get to knock them out in one hit, which is really good. With Timeless, of course. So yeah, Timeless GX Senza is a really strong attack, and this just makes it better. And that is it for our alternate types. So, on to the rest of the set proper. Because there are some stuff that's worth noting beyond these. Just like, these are cards we've had already, but they're sometimes better, sometimes worse now. Pheromosa is a curious one. This doesn't see a ton of play, but it does see play sometimes because it's a 0 retreat mon, and it is an Ultra Beast, so you can sometimes get some good use out of it for that. White Ray unfortunately takes 2 grass energy though, so it's awkward, but it is the main attack that you are going to look at long term here. I do want to note High Jump Kick though, because even though it's only 20 damage, that can get buffed by Beast Energy, and later on Beastite can also be a thing to buff its damage for the prizes you've taken. So it can actually end up being significant if you hit for weakness. But White Ray is the main hit here. It's 90 damage for 2 grass and a colorless, but if you have exactly 1 prize remaining, 180 damage. So this is your finishing blow. And unfortunately there's not a lot of grass type stuff in Ultra Beasts, so it's a little bit difficult to power this up, but if you can, that's a lot of damage, so definitely appreciating that. Then we have Alolan Marowak. This would be really good if Alolan Pokemon were just a little bit better and better designed by the video games. Limbo is not really too great, we don't care too much about that, but Alolan Club for a double colorless energy lets you do 20 damage for every Pokemon you have in play with Alolan in its name. So finally that tag actually means something. Here's the catch. A lot of Alolan Pokemon do not actually evolve from Alolan forms, so like Alolan Raichu evolves from a regular Pikachu. Marowak is one of those Pokemon. Cubone is a regular Cubone. It just evolves exclusively in Alola into its Alolan form. That means that this card does not actually get to max damage most of the time. Including the fact if you're probably going to have a Lele down or something, you can't play this in stuff like Zoroark. It's too restricted. If there was a draw card in Alolan forms, then maybe we could have done something. Yeah, there's Sandslash, but that draws 1 card, that's really bad. So, just not good enough, unfortunately. Speaking of not good enough, Delphox is Auto Burn, and that's all it does. I guess this could potentially synergize with the Infernape because it does burn as well, right? It does more damage with the burn, but it's just not good enough to do 2 stage 2s without any draw power. It's a shame because we have the Psystorm Delphox in play still, and that one's actually kind of cool, but no point in playing that when we don't have the draw power, so yeah. I mentioned the Pyro before. If you have Lysander Labs in play, this does 140 damage, but the problem is Lysander Labs turns off your choice band, so you can't do 170 to Lele, so that's annoying. It does prevent itself from being affected by items and supporters though, so the opponent can't like Guzman this in, they can't hammer away its energies or anything, but it's just not nearly good enough to be honest. The Greninja line is a GX in this set, and you would think I'd be really excited about this one because of the evolutions, but I'm just not. There's a Froakie with Frubbles, which is pretty fun. If it has Water Energy on, it has no retreat, but it's 50 HP, which is terrible. Greninja Break players can rejoice that they now have a 70 HP Froakie that does not die to a single Horn attack from Tapu Bulu. So that's kind of neat, I suppose. The real meat from this set though is the Frogadier and Greninja, the Shurikens. Gale Shuriken is a 20 damage snipe when you evolve into Greninja. Sound familiar? It's basically Golbat. And the Greninja-GX is not a regular single prize at this time, but the GX with 230 HP puts 3 damage counters on when you evolve into this onto any one of the opponent's Pokemon. So it's basically supposed to be Crobat. It has Crobat Breaks attack just about. 1 water double colorless energy, 110 damage. You may shuffle this into the deck. So you take a hit and then you hate slash and put it back into the deck. Search it back out later on, get the stuff, hunky dory, it's all good. I don't know. Shadowy Hunter GX, I would have thought this would just be Shadow Hunter, but whatever. Same attack cost, 130 snipe. Specifically to one of the opponent's bench, that does matter because sometimes you'd want to hit the active for 20 more than what his slash does, but you can't, so meh. I have a couple of problems I have with this. One, if we had dive ball, this would still be a lot better, but that rotated, so meh. Two, the retreat costs. Froggedier's got a retreat cost, Greninja's got a retreat cost, and we don't have access to a low retreat Froakie. At least this is bulkier, so there is that. But Greninja-GX is a retreat cost of 2. Who the heck thought that was a good idea on a Greninja card? Like, seriously. So, like, that gets it stuck fairly often, which is annoying. And then the third one is we have Acerola, not AZ, which is kind of rough. Means that we don't have access to instant pickup on this. We have Super Scoop Up, but that's on a coin flip, which is really bad. There are decks for this, it did see some play, but it's certainly not as good as its predecessors, and that makes me sad to say. On the rest of the water types, the only other good one is Volcanion Prism. 160 HP water type, pretty neat. And it has a couple of good traits. It's not used right now because we don't have good enough water recovery and stuff, but this is really good for Quagnag decks in Lost Thunder. Jet Geyser, if you discard a water from your hand, lets you force the opponent to switch, so you could use that then to power up stuff with Aqua Patch. I guess that's kind of cool. The opponent gets to choose what comes in, but just forcing them out of their active can sometimes be enough, to be honest. And Sauna Blast, for a triple water energy cost, does 100 plus 20 snipe to each of the opponent's Pokemon, so 20 spread really. Pretty solid. It's also Lightning weak instead of Grass weak, which is probably bad in the long run, but again, like most Grass Pokemon hit water types for weakness at the moment. Like most waters are just Grass weak. The Greninja line is a good example of that. So having a separate weakness is a good thing for the water types. I've always wanted to note that when it's happened. Circuitry is another Ultra Beast that you could power up with the Beast Ring if you really want to. 20 damage for Auto Confusion is actually kind of good. This does come up sometimes, so that's neat enough. 120 HP, only 1 retreat too, is kind of nice. 120 HP is a bit low though. And Cablegram for 2 Lightning Colors does 100, just like the GX. But if you have exactly 3 prizes remaining, you auto-paralyze the opponent. And this actually is what ends up making it pretty reasonable. Yeah, Guzma has obviously played a ton, but auto-paralysis at the specific sort of point is kinda devastating. And if you can play this in a single prize deck and get enough of the opponent's Pokemon sufficiently damaged, Tapu Lele can come in and just swap all the damage around and win the game on the spot from there. So you don't need that many either because you've only got 3 prizes left to take. So respectable. The late trio come back in here, but the only one that's worth noting, apart from the goofy artwork on Uxie over here, Mesprit, if you have all of them in play. No, specifically Azelf. The opponent's Pokemon don't have resistance, but resistance doesn't matter that much, so whatever. If Uxie's on the bench, it does 70 for a DCE, also not enough anyway, so who cares. But the Azelf is actually something I remember seeing in Malamar decks, I think, and just some decks in general. Mostly because if you go second, which the opponent usually would make you do in this sort of format, any 1 energy, shuffle one of the opponent's bench Pokemon back into their deck. That's gross. Yeah, so like when we lose Bridget, that actually ends up being pretty good for a lot of decks. So, well, any deck that wants to disrupt, I suppose. So yeah. The Honedge is worth noting for the future because there is an Aegislash, which is a like low tier rogue deck that you can play later on, and this is the best Honedge overall for it. There are ones with higher HP than this, even in this set, but this one has an ability that synergizes with the Aegislash later. Puts 3 damage counters on anything that KO'd it in the active spot. So it doesn't even put it on the Pokemon that KO'd it, it's just on one of the opponent's Pokemon. This sort of damage placement thing is something that Psychic types are going to do later on, so yeah. That's just something to note. I was thinking maybe it synergized with this one, but no, it's a different Aegislasher that does that. Let's talk about the Malamar, because this is the key thing from this set. It's probably the most successful deck overall from this set, and it's going to be around in a lot of different forms for a long time. Malamar is essentially just the next form of Electric or Bronzong, where it recharges an energy from the discard pile to one of the bench Pokemon. 90 HP, but level ball is gone, so that's not too relevant here. Yeah, and its attack is for 60, that sometimes comes up to Psychic and Colorless, but it just recovers energy from the discard pile to your bench. This time it's Psychic is the flavor of the time, so there's a lot of cards. We have a Necrozma-GX from before that uses Psychic Energy as a discard tool, and you can do tons of damage with that, so like this ends up being playable there. And there's a lot of different flavors of this as we go. A couple of them come out in this set too, or you know, like Shining Lugia is something that was in previous stuff that worked. So yeah, cool card. Let's go to the Naganadel, because this is the other neat thing from here. I do kind of want to note the Poipole, because Knockout Reviver is something I have actually seen played sometimes. If this Pokemon gets KO'd next turn and the opponent can't take prizes for it, it takes 2 energy to do that, so it's kind of annoying. But if you can't get to Naganadel for whatever reason, this sometimes comes up. And then the Naganadel itself is a 210 HP Ultra Beast, the only evolution in the Ultra Beast line, but that's totally fine. 3 decent attacks here. I want to say 2 really, because Jet Needle's not that good, but 110 damage for Psychic Double Colorless and not affected by weakness or resistance. Whatever, it's the other 2 attacks that you want here. For any 1 energy, Beast Raid does 20 for each of your Ultra Beasts in play, so basically Zoroark, but exclusively for Ultra Beasts. And then Stinger GX does a very weird thing, to be honest. 3 colors energy is the cost, and both players shuffle their prizes into their deck. Then they put the top 3 cards of their deck face down as their prize cards. So you stick each player to 3 prize cards remaining, even if they only had 1 before and you had 6, it's like, whatever, now you're on even footing. If they KO this, they go down to 1 prize, of course, but I don't remember exactly what the composition was, but there was a Checkmate style deck that basically used this attack and then took 3 prizes on the next turn. That 3 prize number is actually going to be relevant when tag teams come into play, because you can take 3 prizes in a single turn against them. So yeah, strong card, definitely worth noting for the future. Most of the fighting type stuff I've already discussed here, except for the tail end section here, so let's go through them. Tyrantrum is an interesting card. If this wasn't a fossil, I think this could potentially be busted. If you have equal or fewer Pokemon in play than the opponent, you do 60 more damage with this thing and take 30 less. On a 160 HP, effectively a stage 2, you can Red Candy unidentified fossil into this, so there is that. Crunch itself is an auto energy discarder, 2 fighting and colors to do 100, but if you've got Tyrannical Heart in play, which you probably should do, 160 is a lot. 190 with Choice Band KOs, basic GXs, so very strong stuff there. And if you can't KO stuff automatically, the discard is going to be good enough for it. Keep in mind, this 60 is not against GXs either, so this is the 60 plus. So Crunch is going to do 160 to 1 prizes too, which is a hard number to hit, so yeah, pretty strong stuff overall. Just a shame it's a fossil, really, that takes like triple colored, well, 2 colored and a colorless, but good enough. Zygarde gets a couple of decent cards in here. The first one's only 90 HP, this is I think the 10% form, right, the doggo? Earth and Aura prevents it from being affected by weakness and resistance, so that's the downside. You can't hit for weakness with this thing. It's very much like the Holucha from Furious Fists. But if the opponent's got an Ultra Beast in play, you do 60 for a single colorless, which is respectable. The Ultra Beast single prizes are actually pretty solid too, so yeah, it's not too bad. Just a shame about the ability part. You may need to disable that somehow to get the most out of this. It's like Garbodor or Alolan Muk. The second Zygarde's not very good because Calm Strike requires the GX attack to be used. It's still a bit expensive for how much it does, but the Zygarde GX is actually worth noting. 200 HP, which is really good for the basics, so it's on the bulkier side just like Zygarde EX was. This one's a little bit more expensive, but more explosive if it pays off. For double colorless energy, you do 50 damage, and you attach 2 fighting energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Landsrath itself is the main attack here. It does just a flat 130, but it does take 2 fighting and 2 colorless to do, which is a little bit expensive for the damage ratio, but when you're attaching with Cell connected to it, it very quickly balances itself out. And then Verdict GX is what you want to be using as much as possible. The same cost as Landsrath to do 150, so sometimes you're going to get an extra KO because of this, and you automatically prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from GX and EX Pokemon during the opponent's next turn. So a lot of decks rely very, very heavily on GX and Pokemon to do anything, and they can't attack this. And if they Guzma it, well, you know, Guzma around it, they're not actually attacking the Zygarde, so you still have your 4 energy Zygarde to hit. This seems pretty strong, but it does kind of rely on using this GX attack several times in the game to be the most effective, so you're realistically going to see this with Bonnie more than anything, and just like 2 or 3 of it probably. The successful builds with this, there was one that top 4'd Worlds and didn't even play Bonnie, and I'm just like, it's like fine. It's really quite good into a Zoroark heavy meta, but it is expensive and maybe a little inconsistent from time to time to like go toe to toe with stuff that way, so I don't know. It's just about there. And a lot of the reason why it is because we have Diancie Prism over here as well. Fighting type Pokemon get an absolutely absurd damage buff with this stuff here, in case they didn't already have enough. 120 HP, actually kind of hard to knock out for some decks as well. I mean, you can one-shot it with Zoroark and stuff, but it's like, you've still got to put in effort to reach this number on a single Prizer, so that's kind of neat. Princess's Cheers is what we use this for, because Diamond Rain is just triple fighting is too expensive for what it does, but Princess's Cheers makes your fighting Pokemon do 20 more damage whilst this is on your bench, to the opponent's active specifically. Just ow! Keep in mind, we have Regirock that's a 2 Prizer that does this by 10 damage. We still have Strong Energy for the time being, and we have Beast Energy now for the Buzzwole stuff. Buzzwole GX can theoretically hit, with Choice Band on a GX Pokemon, so like a Lele Start or something, you can theoretically hit somewhere in the region of about 110, 120 damage with its basic attack here. Just why? It's also a single Prizer, so it messes up a lot of math that way too. This card is absurd, and is definitely a super strong inclusion into the format. Rockruff is notable because it has 70 HP. It's worse otherwise, but it survives Horn Attack from Tapu Bulu, so this is the one you gotta play, unfortunately. It is cool artwork by the boy though, so yeah, fair enough. There's a Lycanroc in this set that's kind of neat as well. The Dusk form has attacks from both the GXs, actually both GXs, really, because Accelerock was something that the regular Lycanroc GX had. Dangerous Rogue is a lot weaker than the GX attack version, of course, but 20 plus 20 for each of the opponent's bench Pokemon is still pretty strong, considering you can counter energy this one, so not bad in that type of deck. Fighting types didn't really have a counter energy card for outside of like Sudowoodo, but that can be a bit awkward to set up, so this is still good. What is a lot better though is this Buzzwole. Oh boy, this Buzzwole sees a ton of play. 130 HP, Ultra Beast tag, 2 retreat, so still the same lowish retreat cost for the Buzzwoles too, kind of wild. Sledgehammer does 30 damage for 1 fighting, but instead of doing 30 bench damage like Jet Punch, if your opponent has exactly 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does 90 more damage. 120 on a fighting type for a single energy is incredible, to say the least, and it's not too difficult to set the opponent up on this sort of prize map too. If you just go single prizes, that's great. If you go 1 GX and they knock it out, then that's 4 prizes remaining too. Absolutely dumb. Swing around does actually happen sometimes later on in the game because this Buzzwole does actually get to attack late game as well. For 2 fighting and the colorless it does 80 and you flip 2 coins, do 20 more for each heads. Not the greatest attack by a long shot, but with enough of the damage mods that we have around, this can still hit 170, maybe even 190, which is pretty ridiculous to be honest on the single prizer like this. Keep in mind you can Beast Ring charge this as well, so yeah, just absurd. The Dark types do not have a lot, but Yveltal GX is over here. There's not a lot to really love about this card, so it's basically all about Doom Count GX, so you might see this as a tech in a spread deck. For 1 Darkness energy, this GX attack automatically KOs the opponent's active, if they have exactly 4 damage counters on them. So you gotta do some finagling to make this really work, and that's all it does, so it's a little bit of a liability after that. But that's a pretty good effect, right? Auto KO, especially when we get to tag teams, could actually be useful. It never really saw much play, but it's a cool idea. Speaking of didn't see much play, Guzzlord takes 4 Darkness energy to do 160, so like 4 Darkness is already too much. But it is a 160 HP basic, it's an Ultra Beast, so you can do Beast Ring for the stuff there. But if you have 2, 4, or 6 prize cards remaining, the top 10 cards of your deck are getting discarded. So it's basically useless. And we already went over the 2 metal types in this set, there's like nothing for it there. This Flabébé got banned and expanded, believe it or not, because later on there is a Floette, and Florges too by extension, but Floette is the main reason. There's a Floette that when you evolve into it, like discards a card out of the opponent's hand. I think you get the choice of it as well. If it's not discarded, it's shuffled into the deck. It's one of the two. But it gets rid of a card in their hand, and if you go second, you can evolve this Flabébé on your first turn. So yeah, it got banned because of that. The Florges in this set is actually kind of good though. This sees play in stall decks later on. You have to flip a coin and get heads to make its ability work, but if you get it to work, you put an item card from your discard pile on the top of the deck. There is infinite loop style decks later on in the format, one of which is using Lily's Pokédoll. It's kind of like Robo Substitute, or old school Mysterious Fossil, where you just get to have a Pokemon that doesn't give up prizes, so there's that, and it's an item, so there you go. And the other one is with a Donphan that has Sturdy and basically just never dies, goes to 10 HP remaining from full health, and there's a healing item that heals 120 if you have like basically no HP remaining. And then you just keep recovering that item with this, and it's an infinite loop, so it's pretty silly. We finally have a single prize evolution in the format. All of them have been GXs so far. This Sylveon is irritating if you are already playing like a Sylveon control type deck, because I mean apart from a single prize isn't going to ruin your math output. The opponent reveals their hand with the amazingly named Wink Wink attack. For 1 energy, you then get to look and discard a supporter card that they have in that hand and use the effect of it as this attack. You don't have to discard a supporter. Unlike Smeargle from the past, you do not have to use a supporter if you don't want to. So if they've got an N or something, you probably don't do it. But if their only supporter is like a Cynthia or whatever, you can discard that Cynthia, get your shuffle draw, and then the opponent is stuck. It's just gross. It's rude, I tell you. Xerneas GX actually sees a little bit of play later on. I think there was like Xerneas break decks technically played this at the moment, but I have some personal play with this deck, this card as well, because I used it with Gardevoir and Sylveon GX. 180 HP, 2 prizer, overrun, not amazing, but it's the same attack that Manectric EX used to have. 20 for 1 colorless plus 20 snipe. That's fine, I suppose. Aurora Horns is a little bit expensive for how much damage it does, but 2 fairy and a colorless to do 120. Yeah, whatever. It's all about the GX attack with this card. Sanctuary GX is insane. Move all damage counters from each of your Pokemon to the opponent's active, for the same 2 fairy and 2 colorless cost. This is an upgrade on Ninetales GX's GX attack, which was already ridiculously good. This fully heals your entire board, and when your entire board is comprised of like 260 HP Pokemon, that give up lots of prizes if they do die, this suddenly becomes really strong. So yeah, super good card for the future. We are now just about at the end. We've got a couple of dragon types to look at. Gumi is surprisingly good, actually. As long as this is the active, the opponent's attacks cost 1 more. So you can use this in hit and run, stally type stuff. And it ends up being pretty good, because if the opponent can't pay the extra cost of for the attack, they just can't do it. So yeah. Unfortunately, the Gudra is not very good because it needs to be healed. It's 160, it's on Dragon, it's like, yeah, whatever, who cares, you gotta attach a water energy to heal it. Yeah, that requires you to have damage in the first place. Yeah, it's never gonna happen. But what is gonna happen is Ultra Necrozma. This is the touted list with Malamar in this set. It has 190 HP, 2 retreat, it's kind of fine. Both of its attacks take Psychic Metal as their base. It only has 1 attack, which is a bit unusual for this sort of thing, but it only needs 1 to be honest. Photon Geyser, one of its main attacks in the game as well, is a 20 damage attack that discards all the basic psychic energy from it and does 80 more damage for each one you discard. Actually, bit my tongue there, jeez. Yeah, ridiculous. This does 180 damage with 2 energy discarded. Choice band that's a KO on basically every stage 1 GX Pokemon. Ridiculous. You can obviously scale this higher if you have more Malamars. You can just do 100 damage if you need to by just attaching 1 from hand. Really, the only problem with this is the slight inconsistency of getting Metal Energy as well. Like, playing Metal Energy in the deck is inherently a little bit less consistent, and that's the only problem this has. Sky Scorching Light, if it can only be used if the total number of prizes remaining in play is 6 or less. So like if the opponent's on 1 prize and you're on 5, or, you know, 2, 4, 3, 3, etc., or less than that. What it does though is pretty good. Put 6 damage counters on each of the opponent's Pokemon. Damage counters, not damage, so it doesn't get blocked by Mr. Mime. Not that anyone is playing that. I think they should, but they don't. And yeah, it's a finisher. If the opponent doesn't have all of their Pokemon evolved, you can just finish the game with this. So sometimes that is going to come up and is really, really good. Not the primary GX attack you will use in the deck. That's usually Dawnwing's Necrozma, but if you don't get the chance to use that one, this is really strong. Finally, Colossus has 2 Pokemon worth noting. We'll mention the annoying one first actually, because this is probably the more played one. I don't know, I'd have to go look it up, but Noibat is disgusting. For double Colorless Energy, you reveal the opponent's hand and discard every item that you find there. Just rude. Like, the Noibat GX already does Dark Colors to do 50 and prevent the opponent playing item cards, so to have another vector of annoyance that way, it's just rude. Luckily it's only 50 HP on this thing, but whatever. And then finally, because the Noiven is not super good, you need to confuse the opponent's active to do more damage. It's not even that much, so who cares? Finally, it's the Arceus Prism. This card, I actually forgot about its ability as well here earlier on when we were testing stuff. 160 HP, only 1 retreat, which is really good. Its ability prevents the effects from the opponent's attacks except damage. I tried to Hypnosis this thing and that was a bad idea. We remembered that halfway through the turn and it was just like, oops. Its Trinity Star is what I actually saw play for though. Bit of a complicated attack to use. You need to have you have to have exactly a grass, water, and a lightning Pokemon on your bench to even use this attack. If you can manage that, 30 damage for a single energy, search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. Cool. Super nice attack, but like, how the heck are you getting that done, right? There is exactly one deck which played this, and that is Rainbow Force, or Rainbow Road as I love to call it. This deck let you play Galvantula and Volcanion from the Steam Siege set, because the idea is that you want to have lots and lots of different types of Pokemon on your bench, and they are dual types. So you get Grass and Lightning from the Galvantula, you get Water from the Volcanion, Volcanion's also part fire, so you get extra damage on Xerneas, and that's the whole point. You get like 7 types on your bench, and you do boatloads of damage. That's the goal. This lets you accelerate the fairy energy from the deck if you can manage to get Galvantula and Volcanion in play. Very complicated to do though. Pepper was having a really hard time doing it earlier, so probably still too difficult to do. So maybe an alternative is if you play Alolan Vulpix or Octillery in the Tapu Bulu Vikavolt deck, is another way you could do it. Lastly, we do have a grass type that we can use in Pheromosa. We have Lightning in Tapu Koko, and yeah, basically just any water deck at that point could use it as well. So there's a couple of options that we could consider, but none of them were like super amazing, so don't expect to see too much of this. Maybe Vikavolt could use it though, but Vikavolt already accelerates in the deck, so probably not. That's it. This set is, again, like I've talked about it for 50 minutes, so there's clearly a lot in here, but there's just not a lot that excites me. Right, like a lot of the stuff is reprints of the stuff we had before, but just in a different type. Whoop-de-doo, right, we've already seen like the good ones of these done before. Malamar is very strong, but we're going to see this all throughout the next like couple of years anyway, so like I don't really care, to be honest. I'm probably still going to play a Malamar deck, because there's several variants we could do. The Garnadel stuff is neat, but Sai already has a deck for that build, so I probably don't need to do that. And then I suppose there's Zygarde, but we've already had big dumb basic fighting does big dumb basic fighting things for a long time, so it's not really that exciting to me. So yeah, there's just not a lot in this set that I particularly care for, but quite a few things in the future end up using stuff from this set, so it is an important one. Thank you very much for listening, if you have made it this far though. Hopefully it was informative, and yeah, we're only going to do 1 week in this, because I don't think any of us are too enthusiastic about this set. So yeah, till then, till the battles, take care.